What's up, brother? Welcome into Last Call. Caden and Colford, Jace Hodge. Happy April Fool's Day. We're ready to go. Action-packed March, and we're going to get things started with a women's bracket that has been just as fun as the men's. We are having a blast. We'll start by previewing a matchup on matchups. LSU and Iowa. Iowa the 1 seed, LSU that 3 seed, and you're fighting for 2 of the final 4 spots. Obviously, South Carolina and North Carolina State already have those 2. But this is the first matchup that we'll see tonight. And I saw a Travis Scott tweet. He's excited for tonight. Some of those fire basketball and women's basketball history, he says. I mean, first breakdown between these 2 teams?
Well, I mean, this might be the most watched women's NCAA game in history from things I have heard. I mean, this is last year's national championship rematch. LSU, Iowa, probably the 2 best teams on the right day. I mean, we know what happened last year between Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. And, you know, this is what the committee wanted when they placed LSU in this region as the 3 seed. They expected them to run through easily in those first 3 games to have that rematch against Iowa. This game is going to be a shootout once again. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, LSU, a powerhouse. Iowa, Caitlin Clark, leads that squad 100% of the way. But this game, it's hard to tell who's going to win this one.
And I think the women's game is the best it's been in a
100%.
long time. You're having these ladies take advantage of NIL deals. You're looking at Cameron Brink, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese have been amazing. They've been all over the place. I'm seeing them all over TikTok, Twitter. They're in commercials. Caitlin Clark at a State Farm commercial with Reggie Miller, of all people. We're having a blast. And I'm looking for her to drop, 30, 35. It's been a long time since we've seen someone so skilled, especially as a shooter, come out.
I mean, she can pull up from anywhere on the floor and knock it down. And when she's on her game, there's no reason Iowa couldn't win every single game of the tournament and run through and win it all. Personally, I hope they do. I think Caitlin Clark deserves a national championship. I mean, they fell just short last year against these very LSU Tigers.
And that LSU team, you could make the argument that they're much deeper as a squad, right? Some might say you might run 1 deep with Caitlin Clark and the offense runs through her. You take her out of the equation, where goes Iowa? Well, LSU, you have Haley Van Lith, obviously Angel Reese. You have options all over the floor. What scenario would you rather be in?
I think, LSU, I'd rather be with more depth, but they've been very inconsistent this year compared to last year. Last year, I believe they were a 1 seed, and they ran through and won the whole thing when they had less depth. It seems like in the women's game, you don't necessarily need the depth like you would maybe in the men's game. Because Caitlin Clark, she can single-handedly win you a basketball game over any squad in the women's game nowadays.
And we've seen it. That's the matchup for tonight. Another one on the way in the form of UConn versus USC. And this, a battle of experience with UConn against somewhat of a newcoming team in USC, at least when you get down here to the Elite 8, looking to get into the Final 4. How much does experience mean in this one?
Experience means a lot when it comes to these March Madness games. It's a one-off game, winner takes all, winner moves on to the Final 4. Experience plays a big part. But for USC, like you said, they're a new team, but they have an elite player, Juju Watkins. Take probably 50, 60% of their shots over the entire game. You can call her a ball hog, but she's a great player. She can single-handedly take this USC Trojan team to the promised land. But UConn, they have Paige Beckers. She's been there for a while. She's been injured on and off, but she's really getting back into her game these last few months or so. And Paige Beckers, she can do what Caitlin Clark can do on the right day as well.
Paige Beckers, she could have declared for the draft this year, probably gone second, right behind Caitlin Clark. But Caitlin Clark obviously declared Paige Beckers is going to stay back for another year at UConn. It looks like she has national championship on the mind. And one thing I think is more prevalent in the women's game, I kind of touched on this already, is the NIL that we're seeing, which obviously influenced the decision for her to stay at UConn for next year.
100%. The NIL, it's changed the game. For better, for worse, it's revolutionized colleges in every sport. You can make more money, like these women can make more money probably in college than they would make in the WNBA now. I'm sure Caitlin Clark is making millions of bucks right now off of this NIL deals compared to when she goes to WNBA, she'll be making maybe $1 million or $2 million.
The coach is South Carolina. I'm blanking on her name right now, but I think she said, and I quote, Caitlin Clark might be the elitist basketball player in women's college basketball right now. Now, if that's not high praise, I don't know what is, but I'm looking for Paige Beckers to have a Caitlin Clark-esque performance. Might as well Paige Beckers best performance. These are two of the best women's basketball players we've seen. Obviously, Angel Reese, Juju Watkins. I'm excited to see where tonight goes. It's going to be a blast. As we move in to the men's side of the bracket now, where we're seeing good game after good game, and then we're seeing a few Goliaths work their way through in the form of UConn and Purdue. We'll start here with UConn and Illinois. And you start out, it's a really close game, right? And then a 30-0 run.
That just does not happen. That just should not happen in March Madness. It's a one-off game. You're putting it all on the line. This is your one chance to get to the Final Four if you're the Illini. You haven't been in the Final Four in however long it's been. It's been 30-plus years probably for the Illini. And, you're competing, you see right here, 23-23, and then from there, UConn, that 30-0 run. They have 5-0 into half and then 25-0 out of the half. The Illini just forgot how to play basketball, but it was more of UConn's defense because UConn, their defense is great. Their offense is great. They are the best coached team in college basketball. They play an NBA kind of style as well, these Huskies, and they have a great big man in Donovan Clingan.
I think great big men, that's almost the theme of this Final Four. You look at North Carolina State, you look at Purdue. Obviously, you have UConn in the mix, and they're going to play Alabama, who kind of plays a system without that big because, you want to play faster.
They had that big in Nelson
ball.
Who played great in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games. Really good big man on the right day. He's been iffy across the season, inconsistent, but he's found his consistency these last two games for Alabama.
UConn dominating. We'll see you in the Final Four. They're going to Phoenix. Next game, we just mentioned Alabama. They took on Clemson, they had a great tournament themselves. They won big games, hit big shots.
I know. I personally will say I underestimated them. I had them losing first round to Mexico, who I had going to the Elite Eight. I just picked the wrong team in the matchup. Because, Clemson, they took down New Mexico, they took down Baylor, who I really didn't trust at all in the tournament. Arizona, also an inconsistent team. So it didn't surprise me in this run from the Tigers. But it did have to end here. Bama, one of the best offensive teams in the nation. And, offensive teams don't usually succeed in March, but Bama's been an outlier so far. They've had some favorable matchups. They took down UNC. That surprised me personally, taking down UNC, because I thought UNC was dead set out of that region. But Alabama, they surprised me, I will admit. But that big man in Nelson, Mark Sears, namely, phenomenal shooter, phenomenal basketball player, phenomenal point guard. They have a great squad.
As long as shots keep falling, what do you do if you have a team right? You go and shoot out with Alabama. They're playing like one of the fastest teams in college basketball right now. It's not exactly easy to play at that pace. It's hard on any defense, including UConn's, including Purdue's.
I think UConn will feast on this Bama team personally. As long as they're able to close out the three-point line and force tough shots out of Bama, UConn's going to win by 20-plus once again.
Might be easier said than done, but then again, this is a UConn squad that we've seen just cakewalk.
This is one of the best,
Final Four.
One of the best teams I've ever seen in college basketball. Last year they cakewalked as a 4 seed. This year they're cakewalking as the best team in the nation. And they lost, I think, 4 or 5 starters last season. They brought in a whole new squad of transfers, and they're just dominating.
That tells me that a lot of their success is coaching. That's what that tells me. That is a unit that plays together, that likes to play together, and they see great results because of it. And now we move in to what a lot of us would consider a hometown team in Purdue as they took on the Vols. And there are a lot of Tennessee fans that aren't too happy with the game, considering Zach Edey shooting 20-plus free throws on the night.
Well, you look back, a lot of those fouls, they're fouls. They were hacking Zach Edey the entire game, hitting him on the arms. It's bound to be a foul call if you're hitting him like that. Zach Edey, yes, he's 7'6", whatever, but it's very hard to guard him. And it makes, the Vols the entire game were trying to, hit the ball out of his hands before he could go up and post up, but they were hitting his arm. It just fouls.
You got to call it. It's the toughest matchup in college basketball right now, I think, but I will say you're seeing guys like Fletcher Lawyer, like Braden Smith, that are really thriving because every time you bring in a double team on Zach Edey, that's going to leave a shooter open. Matt Painter's done a great job of orchestrating an offense and recruiting shooters to put around that big guy. But now you look into their next matchup, and we'll see.
It's going to be interesting.
We'll see how that plays out.
But
Purdue.
For Tennessee, you can't go without mentioning Dalton Connect. 37 points. This dude was single-handedly keeping the Vols in the game the entire way through, hitting 3 after 3 after 3, kept Tennessee in this one, kept it close. He was probably the second-best player in the nation this year behind Zach Edey. But Zach Edey, and this has been an all-time tournament from him. every game 20 and 10. First player to do that, I believe, since Oscar Robertson, if I'm correct. I think I heard that last night. But, I mean, what a performance from Zach Uindy.
He said, "We're bleeping winners," after the game. I guess we'll see when we go to the Final Four, right? But, hey, a lot of people on that north side of Indiana rooting for that Purdue team. Final game of the men's slate, Duke versus North Carolina State. And this Cinderella story, if you want to call them that, they just keep dancing.
What a run from NC State. 5 games in 5 days to clinch their automatic bid, and now 4 more straight wins, including taking down now their ACC foe, Duke. They took down Duke in the semis of the ACC tournament. They took down Duke here in the Elite Eight. And it's just because of DJ Burns. I mean, DJ Burns, the big man down there, you see it with the ball. It's just tough.
Look at this guy go to work.
You can't. It's hard to stop when he's hitting those difficult shots like that down in the post. I mean, one of the most dominant big men I've ever seen in the game.
This guy sells vending machines, and when you're guarding him, it's like you're guarding a vending machine who's pretty mobile and can jump a little bit and can work around the basket, put it down. This guy is having a tournament of a lifetime. He'll have to match up with Zach Uindy. What are you looking for from that?
I mean, it's going to be interesting. You know, Zach Uindy, the taller, Burns being the bigger guy down low. I'm intrigued to see how Burns, that game right there you see as he's posting up, I'm intrigued to see how Zach Uindy's going to go about guarding that, and how Burns is going to try to guard Uindy if they try to match up someone else on Uindy that's more, agile, or, so to speak.
That's what we have to look for. But as we look at a number 11 North Carolina State knocking off a number 4 Duke, I keep thinking these older teams, especially year after year, are going to be more successful in the tournament than teams like Kentucky and teams like Duke because they're just full of freshmen, right? And obviously they're the most talented players probably in college basketball, but they're going to the league after 1 year, and that's where you have these coaches and these programs where you keep Zach Uindy for 7, 8 years or however long he's been at Purdue, right? It feels like it's been a long time.
You look at the game now, and seniors this season have been the best players in basketball. By far. I mean, the experience is 100% above anything else right now in the college game. I mean, DJ Burns, this is his 6th year. This is his COVID year that he's playing on right now. And, I mean, a much-needed COVID year for NC State as they're a Final Four team. I mean, it resembles the 83 run they had. They were a lower seed, and they went through and won the entire championship in 83, NC State. This is the first time they've been in the Final Four since that very year.
Hey, 2 teams in the Final Four for NC State. I wouldn't mind being on that campus right now. But
yeah, the women's
as
team
we look at the Final Four teams left, UConn, Alabama, that game, look, if Alabama does not score 160 points, I simply do not see how they beat UConn.
I agree.
If they don't come out and go 15 for 22 from 3, I don't see how they have any chance against UConn. UConn dominates in every facet of the game against the best teams in college basketball. Better rebounders, better scorers, better defenders. They're bigger than all these teams. And we can just list it off time and time again, but it's going to come down to who can beat UConn. There's a reason they were the favorites.
I don't know if anyone can beat UConn. The only team that I favor at this point to beat UConn is Purdue. I mean, it seems like Purdue UConn is the best final possible at this point. I mean, it's 2 1 seeds, but that would be a great matchup because Purdue, defensively, much better than they were last year. Offensively, the best 3-point shooting team in the nation, percentages-wise. They don't take that many threes, but when they do, they hit them. You know, that guard play this year for Purdue, 100% better than it was last year. Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith,
most efficient team from 3.
Most efficient team from 3, and they have the most dominant big man in the game.
And as we move into that game, we touched on it a little bit, that matchup between Burns and Uindy. Wow, I'm so ready for that.
100%.
I'm so ready to watch them play. But I will say, this is the first time in the tournament that I don't think Zach Uindy will be doubled every play. Obviously, you're going to see that double come, but I feel like this is the first time he's playing a big man that can stand down there in the post one-on-one. And I think that really neutralizes Purdue's offense.
Well, I mean, thing about, guarding Purdue, you have to be able to guard both Zach Uindy and the three-point line because they are the most efficient three-point shooting team in the nation. You have to be able to, just space out a little bit more and guard that three-point line because if you leave them open, they're going to knock them down. Mason Gillis is a great three-point shooter as well from outside the arc, especially in the corner. He missed a few against Tennessee the other night, but he's able to shoot the 3-ball. So if you're NC State, you want to leave only one man on Uindy so you can allow the other players to guard the outside of the arc.
Well, that one man to do that, DJ Burns. I will say in the final minutes of the Purdue game, I was not thrilled with Purdue's offense. It was Braden Smith to Uindy, back to Braden Smith. If the shot wasn't there, back to Uindy. If the shot wasn't there, back to Braden Smith. You take the entire 30 seconds for Zach Uindy.
They were relying on the whistle a lot as well. I mean, it works because Zach Uindy does get the most foul calls by far in college basketball, but they were relying on the whistle a little bit too much.
Is that sustainable is the question.
I mean, it might be with Zach Uindy down low.
Might be.
I mean, he gets that many foul calls. He draws about 10 a game, which is insane numbers.
We're excited for a Final Four in Phoenix. We'll have that coverage for you here on Last Call. But when we come back, we're going to take a look at the other hometown team, and the Indiana Pacers move to the NBA and talk basketball there.
Emma Donnan, elementary and middle school. Discover the Donnan difference. A school where you can celebrate others. Come together as a community. Be a part of a learning environment where students and teachers are appreciated. Emma Donnan, a culture that can't be beat, that's going onward together. A school filled with love. Emma Donnan.
I love my school.
Pacers fresh off a win against the Los Angeles Lakers pretty handily as well. 109-90 as they take down LeBron and AD. This is coming after a trip where Anthony Davis went off like he did in the in-season tournament. That was in LA. Would you get revenge in some way here? Where do you feel the Pacers sit as a squad at this point in the season?
I think they sit about where they thought they might be at this point in the season. You know, they're trying to avoid that play-in tournament, sitting in sixth in the standings right now with the Heat and Sixers both right on their tail. But I think this is the spot they wanted to be in. You know, it's their second year really in that, rebuild process. Last year they had a pretty good first season. They built towards something with Halliburton. This season they've really gone to take the next step. They got Siakam, the second superstar on the squad, and they're now a playoff contender. They could take down a team in the playoffs. I think they sit where they want to be, but next season is going to be the real season that'll show how good Indiana will be for the future.
Tyrese Halliburton, a good game from him, 21, 8 and 8. We're starting to get back to that first half of the season where this guy was on fire. Miles Turner, he had just 10 and 5, but now you see that pickup and Pascal Siakam really coming to the mix.
Siakam had a great 4 or 5 games in that West Coast road trip. He had 3 or 4, best games I've seen him play as in a Pacer uniform.
And I think we're starting to see the Pacers and Rick Carlisle play through Siakam. I think that's where most of your offense is initiated, where he wants to go back to the basket in the post. Obviously, he's a bigger forward in that regard, but as we see him progress as a Pacer, how do you see his role developing?
Halliburton obviously was the only option they really had when he was on the team without Siakam. He's a great passer, but Turner, Mathurin, Nesmith, not really a sustainable second option. You pick up Pascal Siakam, and now you have him as a possible number 1 option because he's on that squad. He can do the same. He's a great scorer inside the paint, inside the post, outside the arc. He's efficient in three-point shooting. He's a great number 1 option when needed to be when Halliburton is not having a great night.
Do you think this rough stretch of games from Halliburton tells us that he needs to be that number 2 spot? Do you think Tyrese Halliburton is still the guy on this team?
I think he's still a guy on this team. Without Siakam, he was doing just fine carrying the squad on his back. He's still a great passer. He's a great shooter. He obviously had that rough stretch of games, but Siakam was able to carry the load when needed to be. That's why Siakam pickup was so great, because when Halliburton's not having a great night when he's injured, Siakam can then turn and be the number 1 guy on the team.
Another guy off the bench who's been having a pretty solid couple weeks, T.J. McConnell.
T.J. McConnell's almost having better stats than Halliburton. He raises the question, is Halliburton a system point guard?
Wow. Now that is a question to get into, right? But T.J. 16, 3 and 3, and I don't think you can ask for a better leader around the NBA.
This dude just runs around the paint and just fadeaway jumper swish every time.
It's automatic.
It's unstoppable. You can't stop it because he finds the open spot in the defense and just nails it.
So you're looking into a matchup with the Nets, who aren't exactly star-studded, but they're capable. For the Pacers to win in this matchup, what does it take?
I mean, the Nets, they aren't the greatest squad. I believe they played earlier this season, and the Nets did get that win, if I'm correct. I mean, they played 2 straight games in a row against each other, so it's obviously going to be interesting how they match up. But they just need to guard Mikal Bridges and Cam Thomas. Those are the only 2 options that they have scoring-wise, especially Mikal Bridges. He can put up 40 a night if he wanted to. But once again, defense has been the killer for the Pacers. But they had their best defensive game so far this season against the Lakers, allowing only 90 points.
Yeah, that's
against
huge.
a guy who killed them already twice this year, AD. I mean, AD in the in-season tournament game went off.
And LeBron James, who's still one of the best players
in that game in LA a few weeks ago, the Pacers allowed the most points all season, 150, and AD went off in the first quarter. They were able to guard AD much better last time. Siakam had a great defensive game against him. This time, just play some defense against Mikal Bridges, and this should be a W.
I think just the last thing you want if you're the Pacers, right, is to let a team like the Nets run a shootout with you, right? Because then at that point, whoever's hot's going to win the game. I think you have to rely on your bigs in this scenario, Miles Turner, Pascal Siakam. I think if they have a good game, they control the boards, control the pace, and play a little bit of defense. I'm not saying that you need to be the East All-Stars in this case. I'm not saying you need to be the Celtics. But you just need to play solid basketball on the defensive side of things, keep them under.
And what you got to do is beat
probably.
an underwhelming team. The Pacers have struggled to beat teams that are on the lower end of the standings all season long. It's the reason they aren't higher in the standings. If Indiana was able to beat those lower level teams, they'd be probably top 4 in the East right now. But instead they sit at 6th, and they're trying to hold on for dear life to avoid that play-in tournament because Miami is chasing. And you know, now that April is here, it is now Jimmy Butler time.
Jimmy Butler,
if I can say his name, Jimmy Butler time.
Jimmy Butler might be cooking. Let's take a look at the East, though, and where the Pacers sit, where Jimmy sits. Jimmy's at 8. Obviously, he worked through the play-in last year. Pacers are at 6. They're holding off the Heat and the Sixers. But the Pacers right now, they'd match up with the Cavs, if I'm right in that scenario. Matching up with the Cavs.
The thing is, you only sit about 2.5 games back of Cleveland. It's 3 right now. But, you know, you go on a little run here, the Pacers could be sitting in that 4-5 matchup.
Crucial basketball being played as we move to the West, where we're still seeing a battle.
Talk about a battle. The 1, 2, and 3, they've been just back and forth for the last 2 weeks or so. Who's going to get that 1 seed is the real question. I think it's Denver.
And even that question that we had asked Charles last time on Last Call, who do you see outside of, the top 4? Asking Heather as well. I'm seeing capable teams on capable teams. I see capable teams in that right column. The Lakers
and the Rockets
Warriors
have been hot recently. They just lost to Luka and the Mavericks yesterday, but they have won 10 of their last 12, and they are sneaking up on Golden State. Golden State, though, they've been holding their own. They've been winning their own games. They've been on a little streak since that as well. So I think Houston will get held off. But you mean the Warriors, the Lakers, the Suns, the Kings, all 4 teams in the play-in could really give a series to any of those top teams.
And now we're getting a phone call from New York, some might say. A question here on Last Call. Which Western Conference team would be scared to play the Lakers in the playoffs? Well, when I think about that, I think small teams. I think teams that are fast. Lakers are good at controlling the pace. I think when they play through Anthony Davis, play through LeBron James, get into that bogged down half-court scenario, I think they're one of the better teams in basketball, at least in the West Coast.
The Thunder would be scared.
The Thunder.
Thunder, inexperienced. They play through Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at guard. I mean, they have the big inch at Holmgren, but they're inexperienced. And against one of the best players of all time, maybe the GOAT, LeBron James, that could be an interesting matchup. The Lakers could give them a tough time.
I think you can make that same argument for the Pelicans in that scenario. Not a whole lot of playoff experience, at least meaningful playoff experience. I like that take. I like LeBron and Anthony Davis in the playoffs. Seems like they always find their way there. We forget that LeBron went
that's
to
a big
8 straight.
if they get there, though, because, I mean, right now they're sitting in 9th. If they lose that first play-in game, they're out. They're done. And, I mean, as of right now, they play Golden State, and that isn't ideal.
A lot of basketball to play out in the NBA and the NCAA, but for the first time in Last Call, we're going to break down some baseball. Opening weekend, and it was a lot of fun. Of course, we played a couple games overseas to start for the Dodgers and a couple squads. But, Jace, as baseball season has come, what teams are you looking at, or do you have a favorite?
Well, I mean, you know, I'm a Yankee fan, so them sweeping the Astros 4-0 in Houston was very nice to see.
That's always nice.
It was very nice to see. But I'm a big fan of the Orioles this year. They got some great signings. They're a young team. Last year they were the 1 seed, the best overall record in the MLB last season, the Baltimore Orioles. They got a great pitcher now. They began 2-1, but I still think they're the best team in the AL, the Baltimore Orioles, which is nice to see Baltimore actually be good, in baseball.
A little closer to Indiana, you have Cincinnati down south. They're not looking too bad, honestly.
Not bad. I mean, they got a young squad as well.
In the series against the Nationals, this young lineup, we knew that they could hit. Obviously, you're looking at guys like Jonathan India. You just lost Joey Votto, which was a big locker room presence, but you have guys like India. You have guys like Spencer Steer. You have just hitters on hitters, young guys that are willing to come in and play a role.
De La Cruz, the rookie last year.
Man. He is crazy. You got to watch him live. You should see this guy on the base pass. Ellie De La Cruz on the base pass is a heat-seeking missile. This guy works his way around the bases almost better than anybody in the league. So I'm excited to see the young core of the Reds get better. They probably need some work in the bullpen, on the mound, probably overall. But I think they could be a wild card team come the end of the season.
But it seems like it's the usual, suspects. The Yankees, the Dodgers seem to be some amongst the favorites. The Astros obviously still up there, even though they began 0-4. But they had a tough opening weekend matchup with the Yankees. And the Yankees, they got Juan Soto. And Juan Soto has been a great, addition to the team. And Oswaldo Cabrera had a weekend for his life. Had, I think, 2 game-tying home runs in two of the games. And he was in the 9 slot in the batting order. And he had a great first weekend. The Yankees really got something going on. The Blue Jays obviously still up there with Vladdy. They're going to be a great team. The AL East is stacked. The Yankees, the Blue Jays, the Orioles, the Rays are always up there. The Red Sox, they'll be around doing something probably. But the AL East is stacked for sure.
A Goliath in baseball, and the Dodgers. This team is spending millions, if not billions.
Oh, it's billions at this point. It's billions at this point. It's still that contract thing with Shohei is the wildest thing I've ever seen. He's getting paid $2 million a year. He's going to get all that money on after he's done. It's just got me confused.
I think you're expecting a down year, at least salary cap wise, when it does come time to pay that contract, because that was one of the biggest contracts in pro sports history for one of the best players.
I'm still waiting for him to contribute batting wise. He didn't really do too much in the first few games. Obviously, they've lost his pitching for this season because of the injury he has. So he won't be able to pitch this season. He's just a straight batting guy at this point.
But that's why he got that huge contract. You're paying 2 players. You're paying a pitcher. You're paying a batter. I think the batting definitely turns around for Shohei. I think I was going to say prospects, not a prospect. He's one of the best players that I think we've ever seen in the game.
I think the best overall, all-around player we've ever seen in baseball.
Shohei, just his ability to hit timely hits, that's big in baseball. Timely hits, his ability to knock it out of everything. Look, we're excited for the MLB season.
It's always the Dodgers. It's always the Dodgers.
Another question.
Oh, goodness.
Way too early MVP vote?
Wow.
The MVP, man. Look, how about Juan Soto in a breakout
I was going to say
that
too. He's on fire right now, and he seems to be loving New York. He seems to be having the time of his life in New York. When he was in San Diego, didn't seem to really enjoy that too much with that team. He was in Washington, had a great few years in Washington, won a title in Washington, but he is loving this Yankee squad right now, and he had some very, very timely hits against the Astros.
This guy's beating the cover off the baseball, and when you get hot, you can stay hot for a game, a week, a year. I'm hoping he does. I'm hoping to watch Juan Soto kind of revitalize his career. I think he kind of got lost there in San Diego for a while, got overlooked.
Because, there were so many stars in San Diego. There's a lot of stars in New York too, but he gets looked at more because it is New York. It's the Yankees. They're the pinnacle of baseball. He
just kind of fell flat. That entire Padres team fell flat because you were looking at Manny Machado for a while, Fernando Tatis. He got tied up in all kinds of stuff. Then you add Juan Soto, and you're thinking, wow, this is a World Series contender. And they just never came out to be what they wanted to be. But Juan Soto on the Yankees, new look Yankees.
But there'll be the usual. Acuna will be up there, I'm sure. Bryce Harper might be up there somewhere. It's going to be enough players up there for baseball.
We'll have more baseball. We're going to recap the end of the men's and women's brackets. Hop into the NBA. Playoffs are on the way. Clips next week. Won't be on last call, but the week after. You betcha.